Hello and welcome to Appraisal, Assessment, and Evaluation for Counselors, Week 1. This week we begin with Chapter 1, Introduction to Assessment. When we think of the term assessment, it is often defined as the process of gathering information about a client. We can easily gain information from many different sides. We can take a look at what the client reports as problem, issue, challenge. We can gain information on the impact that problem, issue, challenge has on a family, on relationships, perhaps even how it's affecting current events, past events. And we can also assess and gather information about other past events or situations, relationships that are currently affecting that client. The primary purpose of counseling assessment is to help us better understand and be able to describe the presenting issues that are at the heart, that are at the root of why the client is coming to see us as for counseling. Assessments can help us monitor whether our interventions, our therapeutic interventions, i.e. the treatment plan, is having a positive impact on the presenting issues that are the focus for the client. Additionally, while also assessing the effectiveness of interventions in the treatment plan, we're also, in essence, assessing the client's goals and the work that they are doing, as well as making sure that the work that we are doing aligns with and is targeted at those goals and are appropriate interventions to help that client meet their goals. This first week, we're covering the first chapter in our textbook. This first chapter is going to cover some very basic historical background information on testing and provide an overview of much of the terminology within assessment and testing in counseling. We're going to explore the importance and the values of testing, that gathering of information, and its purpose, once again, as I referenced a few moments ago, in terms of decision making. And assessment also helps us understand and conceptualize, perhaps encapsulate, expand upon, provide more clarity on the client's issue. Assessment is not a one-time event. Assessment is a process. While there are tools and instruments and assessments that oftentimes perhaps may be completed one time, many of them can be repeated many times or as is needed for a client. But when we think of the overarching umbrella term of assessment, this is an ongoing process for us with our clients. In terms of basic terminology, we are going to look at the different types of formal and informal assessment and testing tools, instruments, sources that we use as counselors. There are many different types of interviews, whether they be formal interviews, clinical structured interviews. We're going to take a look at the different categories of tests, the different types of observation. All of these types of methods of recording, as well as the types of methods of recording information as well. You'll note that there are very standard formalized assessments, which are looking at gathering oftentimes very objective, quantitative information. There are informal, non-standardized assessments that gather more subjective types of information, more qualitative. The psychometrics properties are the statistical outcomes that a standardized measure is offered to us in what that instrument reveals to us within its construct of purpose. So we'll be taking a look at what is the purpose of a type of assessment or testing instrument. And throughout the course, we'll be also looking at how to determine what instrument or test, how to make a decision about that. The instruments in counseling are what we would define as the forms of testing or tests that are used. In the previous slide, I already referenced the qualitative instruments, which again are more non-numeric, and quantitative instruments, which are very numeric. We have the norm referenced assessments, which are very quantitative, and we also have criterion reference tests, which compare results to a predetermined standard for that test. We have self-referenced assessments that compare results to previous results. Understanding the process of assessment is really our first task. Then we're going to work on the effectiveness and the accuracy of the testing procedures. So we're going to learn how to take all this information, and we're going to learn to say then, what do we do with it? We've identified assessments, tests. We've either completed them with the client, for the client, with the client themselves completing it, then us scoring it. So what do we do with this? So assessments, again, can really help us hone in and focus in on the purpose of perhaps screening, identifying, and diagnosing, as well as intervention planning, treatment planning, and progress evaluation in terms of our interventions as well as the client's work in meeting their goals. The process of assessing uses multiple sources that are to yield all of this information. Oftentimes, various tests and assessments can tell us whether a specific intervention or counseling as on a more whole gestalt level, or perhaps a very focused level, is in fact beneficial to the client, or can be, or has been beneficial. So all this information, again, helps us provide relevant, accurate, reliable information from various methods. And then we learn what to do with it in terms of integrating it from all these methods and sources. A few examples. What if a client is coming in to see us for counseling to work on feelings of anxiousness? Well, we would want to then take a look at using the assessments that measure anxiety and the symptomatology with anxiety. And that would be helpful at the very start of the counseling process. These assessments can help us determine if a client meets the diagnostic criteria for a form of an anxiety disorder as identified in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, the DSM, in our current 5 edition, as well as can help us determine perhaps specific symptomatology, for example. Then, after deciding upon a treatment plan to address the anxiety symptoms, the assessments can also then be used to measure whether the anxiety symptoms are lowered as the treatment is provided, which is what we would expect, or are the symptoms in fact scoring higher. So assessment and counseling is vital. Again, we're looking at screening, we're looking at conceptualizing, the treatment planning and goal setting, and then the ongoing monitoring, treatment evaluation, the outcomes, management of the counseling and the therapeutic intervention, and the work of the client with respect to their goals for counseling. There are several guiding organizations that you'll see. Many of these you've heard of, you refer to, and in many of your courses throughout your clinical mental health counseling program, we use them as a lot of their publications as sources, and they are the guiding organizations that really benchmark the standards for us as clinicians, and have a great voice, a great impact on the assessments and the testing that is through research validated and then approved to be used by us. The American Counseling Association provides a code of ethics. Section E is specific to assessment. I did include a link to the ACA Code of Ethics, the current edition, 2014, in the beginning of our course here in Moodle. That document is one that you always want to have handy. The National Board for Certified Counselors Code of Ethics also has standards that also speak to assessment. I referenced that I'm a National Certified Counselor. That is the credentialing body for that, the National Board for Certified Counselors, the NBCC. We have the Association for Assessment and Research in Counseling, and that's the AARC. They have a guiding document that includes the responsibilities for users of standardized tests, and that is currently in the 4th edition. We have the Council for Accreditation of Counseling and Related Educational Programs, CACREP, and they address assessment and evaluation as part of their standards, which is why we have this course in your program, and why there are elements of the CACREP standards that are referenced in the syllabus, and you will see that in all the syllabi for the courses in your clinical mental health counseling program. Additional organizations include the American School Counselor Association. They also have an ethical standards for school counselors document. The Commission on Rehabilitation Counselor Certification, CRCC, they also have a code of professional ethics for rehab counselors. And we have the Fair Access to Testing, which advocates FACT. They advocate for access to testing for qualified professionals, and that includes within our scope of practice as clinical mental health counselors, and there are other scopes of practice specific to psychologists, psychiatrists, etc. Another one to make note of would be the Addiction Counselors Association, the National Addiction Counselors Association, they also have a code of ethics and standards. There are many other ones that you will hear about and probably discover most likely through the various coursework that you're doing in your program. So enjoy your chapter 1, and I look forward to working with you as we move through the text, this course, and begin to explore these testing instruments and the benefits of them to us as counselors. Have a great week.